I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm 32 years old, and 3 months ago, I was rushed to the emergency room with a critical heart condition that required immediate surgery. My 2-year-old daughter, Emma, needed someone to watch her while I went under the knife. So, from the back of that ambulance, with my chest feeling like it was being crushed in a vice and monitors screaming around me, I called my parents. I remember my voice shaking as I said, "Mom, I need you to come get Emma right now. They're saying I need emergency heart surgery." I'm really scared. There was a long pause on the other end. Then my mother's voice came through, ice cold and dripping with annoyance. "Sarah, you're always so dramatic about everything. It's probably just anxiety. You know how you get." "Mom, I'm in an ambulance. The paramedic is literally telling me my heart rhythm is dangerously irregular. Please, I just need you to watch Emma for a few hours. That's all I'm asking." She sighed like I had just asked her to move a mountain with her bare hands. "We can't. Your father and I have plans tonight. We're taking your brother to see Drake. We've had these tickets for months. You know how hard those were to get." I couldn't breathe, and it wasn't just my heart condition. "Mom, I could die. Do you understand that? Your granddaughter needs someone too. Please, stop being so melodramatic. Call one of your friends. We're not canceling our plans because you decided to have a panic attack. You always do this, Sarah. You always make everything about you." The line went dead. I sat there in the back of that ambulance, the paramedic adjusting the oxygen mask on my face, monitors beeping all around me, and I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I was completely alone. The two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, who were supposed to drop everything when their child was in danger, had just chosen a concert over their daughter's life. Over their granddaughter's well-being. Over everything. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. If you believe that family should show up when it matters most, if you have ever felt like the invisible one in your own family, then hit that subscribe button right now. I share real stories like this every single week, stories about impossible choices, and the moment people finally decide they've had enough. I don't want you to miss what comes next. Trust me, this story is far from over. Now, let me tell you what happened next. From my gurney in the emergency room, with nurses rushing around me, IVs being inserted into both arms, and doctors shouting medical terms I didn't understand, I made 2 calls that would change everything. The first was to Elite Care Services, a professional childcare agency I had researched months ago when I first started having heart palpitations. I never thought I'd actually need them, but something told me to save their number. Within 20 minutes, a NICU-trained nanny named Patricia arrived at the ER to take Emma home. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and the calm confidence of someone who had seen absolutely everything. Emma, who usually screamed when strangers got too close, actually reached for Patricia's hand. The second call was to my bank. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to try 3 times to get my password right. I transferred $3,800 from my main checking account into a separate savings account that I had opened years ago and barely used. That was the exact amount I had been depositing into my parents' account every single month for the last 8 years. They thought it was coming from my brother's investment income. They thought Marcus, the golden child, the one who could never do anything wrong, was the one taking care of them. They had no idea it was me. They had never once questioned where the money actually came from. Before I tell you what happened when my parents finally found out the truth, and trust me, it was explosive, I need you to understand how I got here. I need you to understand the years of being overlooked, the decades of being the invisible daughter, the slow, painful realization that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. Growing up in our household, I was always the other child. My brother Marcus was 3 years older than me, and from the moment he could walk, he was destined for greatness. At least, that's what my parents believed. He was the football star, the homecoming king, the kid who could charm anyone and do absolutely no wrong in their eyes. I was the quiet one. The one who liked books more than parties. The one who spent hours drawing in notebooks instead of going to football games. The one who brought home straight A's and got nothing more than a nod in return. I remember one report card in particular. I was in 10th grade. I had gotten all A's and 1 B+ in advanced chemistry. I ran home to show my parents, practically vibrating with excitement. My dad glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds and said, "Why isn't this an A?" My mom didn't even look up from her phone. That same semester, Marcus got a C- in English. My dad hired him a private tutor at $200 an hour and told him he believed in him. He told Marcus that grades didn't define him, that he was a genius in his own way. I stood there in the doorway of the kitchen, my perfect report card hanging limp in my hand, and I felt something crack inside me. That crack never fully healed. It just got wider and wider with every passing year. The pattern continued into adulthood. Marcus dropped out of college after 2 years to pursue entrepreneurship, which really meant jumping from one failed business idea to another. There was the gourmet popcorn company that lasted 4 months. Then the app that was supposed to revolutionize grocery shopping, but never got past the idea phase. Then the real estate scheme that lost $30,000 of my parents' retirement savings in 6 weeks. My parents funded every single venture without question. They bought him a condo when he was 23, 2 bedrooms, nice neighborhood, brand new appliances. They co-signed for a BMW that he absolutely could not afford. And when his ventures inevitably collapsed, as they always did, they covered his debts without a moment of hesitation. They never asked him to pay them back. They never even mentioned the money. Meanwhile, I put myself through nursing school working 3 jobs at a time. I cleaned hotel rooms on weekend mornings. I waited tables on weeknights. I tutored high school students in biology on my lunch breaks. I graduated with honors, top 10% of my class. I landed a position at County General Hospital, one of the busiest trauma centers in the state. I bought a small house in a modest neighborhood, a fixer-upper with a leaky roof and a backyard full of weeds, but it was mine. All on my own. Without a single dollar from my parents. Do you know what they did when I graduated? They came to the ceremony, I'll give them that. But they left early. They left before I even walked across the stage because Marcus had a big investor meeting. That investor meeting turned out to be drinks with his friends at a bar. They never apologized. They never even acknowledged that they had missed it. When I got pregnant with Emma at 29, after my husband Daniel died in a construction accident, my parents' response was typically underwhelming. I called my mother from the hospital, still in shock, still covered in Daniel's blood because I had been holding him when he died. I told her I was pregnant. I told her Daniel would never meet his daughter. I told her I didn't know what to do. She said, and I will never forget these words, "Well, that's going to make things harder for you, isn't it?" No offer to help. No excitement about their first grandchild. No comfort for a daughter who had just become a widow and a mother in the same terrible hour. Just disappointment that I had complicated my life. That I had made things harder for myself. As if that was somehow a moral failing on my part. What they did not know, what they had never known, was that I had been supporting them financially for nearly a decade. It started when I was 24. I had just gotten my first real nursing job with a decent salary. I was finally making enough to breathe a little, to save a little, to imagine a future that didn't involve endless financial stress. Then my parents called me one night, which was unusual because they only ever called when they needed something. I remember looking at my phone and feeling my stomach drop because I just knew, that something was coming. My dad said, "Sarah, we need to talk to you about something serious. We're 3 months behind on rent. We might get evicted next week." I was shocked. They had never told me things were that bad. How did this happen? You both work. You have jobs. Your mother's hours got cut at the pharmacy. My back has been acting up, so I've been missing shifts at the warehouse. We just need a little help to get caught up. Just this once. How much do you need? He paused. About $4,000 to get current and cover next month. I had $6,000 in my savings account. Money I had been carefully setting aside for a down payment on a better car, for emergencies, for a future that I was trying so hard to build. But they were my parents. They needed help. I told myself that's what family did. They helped each other. "I can help you," I said. "I'll send the money tomorrow." "Thank you, sweetheart." We'll pay you back as soon as we're on our feet. We promise. They never paid me back. Not a single dollar. But a month later, they called again. Then the next month and the month after that. It became a pattern. A predictable, exhausting, soul-crushing pattern. They needed $800 here for utilities, $1,200 there for car repairs, another $1,000 for property taxes. Always temporary. Always until they got back on their feet. Those feet never seemed to find solid ground. After 6 months of irregular payments, I did something they never knew about. I called their landlord directly and introduced myself. I explained that I was their daughter and that I wanted to set up an automatic payment system. Every single month, $3,800 went straight from my checking account to their rent and utilities. I never missed a payment. Even when I was struggling myself. Even when I had to choose between buying groceries and sending that money. I always found a way to make it work. They thought Marcus was covering it through some investment account he had set up for them. He was more than happy to take the credit for it. Why wouldn't he? He got all the praise without spending a dime. Your brother is so successful, my mother would say at family dinners, beaming at Marcus across the table. He takes such good care of us. We're so lucky to have him. I would sit there, my hands in my lap, saying nothing. I never corrected her. I told myself it was enough that they were taken care of. I didn't need recognition. I didn't need thanks. I was just being a good daughter. That's what good daughters did, right? They gave quietly. They didn't expect anything in return. But over 8 years, that quiet giving added up. $3,800 a month for 96 months. Let me do the math for you because even I couldn't believe it when I calculated it. That is $364,800. Over $250,000 that I had quietly funneled to my parents while they praised Marcus for his generosity and treated me like I barely existed. Like I was a ghost at their table. Like I was nothing more than an afterthought, if I was even that. When Emma was born, I called to tell them the news. I was still in the hospital bed, still exhausted from 18 hours of labor, still reeling from the fact that I was doing this alone. My mother answered on the 4th ring. "That's nice, dear," she said, her voice distracted. "Listen, I can't talk long. We're heading to Marcus's place for dinner. He's grilling steaks. You know how he gets when people are late." She hung up before I could even tell them Emma's middle name. They didn't visit the hospital. They didn't bring gifts. They didn't offer to help with the sleepless nights or the endless feedings or the crushing loneliness of raising a newborn by herself. When Emma was 3 months old and I was drowning in exhaustion and grief over Daniel, they came by once. Once in 3 months. My mother held Emma for maybe 5 minutes before handing her back. "She's fussy," she said, as if that was somehow my fault. As if I had done something wrong by having a baby who cried. They left after 20 minutes because they had theater tickets with Marcus. 20 minutes. That was all they could spare for their only grandchild. For 2 years, this was my reality. Working full-time as an ER nurse, 12-hour shifts that left me physically and emotionally drained. Raising Emma completely alone, no partner to share the load, no family to lean on. And paying my parents' rent while they lavished attention on Marcus and ignored their own granddaughter. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I didn't need them. I told myself that Emma and I were doing great on our own. And then my heart started giving out. It began 3 weeks before the emergency. I was at work in the middle of a trauma shift, stitching up a laceration on a construction worker when I felt my heart skip. Not the little flutter you get when you're nervous or when you've had too much coffee. This was different. This was a genuine physical sensation of my heart stopping for 1 beat, 2 beats, then racing to catch up like an engine that had stalled on the highway. I ignored it at first. Nurses are the worst patients in the world. We always think we know better. We always tell ourselves it's nothing. We always keep going because someone else needs us more. But it kept happening. 2, 3, 4 times a shift. Then it started happening at home. I would be playing with Emma on the living room floor, building block towers that she would gleefully knock over, and suddenly my heart would stutter. I would have to sit down, catch my breath, wait for the feeling to pass. Emma would look at me with those big brown eyes, the ones she got from her father, and pat my face with her little hand. "Mama, okay?" she would ask. And I would smile and say, "Mama's fine, baby. Just tired." I finally went to see Dr. Chin, a cardiologist at my hospital. He ran tests. An EKG that showed something concerning. A stress test that I barely finished. An echocardiogram that took 45 minutes while a technician moved a wand across my chest. His face grew more serious with each result. He sat me down in his office, closed the door, and told me I had a condition called ventricular tachycardia. My heart's electrical system was misfiring in a way that could be fatal. Without treatment, this could lead to sudden cardiac arrest. Sudden death. No warning. No time to say goodbye to Emma. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair. "What kind of treatment?" "We need to do a catheter ablation. We'll go in through your femoral artery, thread a catheter up to your heart, find the area that's misfiring, and ablate it. Basically, we create a small scar that stops the abnormal electrical pathway. It's a serious procedure, but it's the best option we have." "Is it dangerous?" He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. All heart procedures carry risk. There's a chance of complications. Bleeding, infection, damage to the heart muscle. But without it, Sarah, you're at serious risk of sudden death. Your heart could stop at any moment. We need to schedule this soon. I scheduled the surgery for 3 weeks out. I needed time to arrange childcare. I needed time to prepare Emma for the idea that Mama would be gone for a few days. I didn't tell my parents. What would have been the point? I didn't want to hear my mother tell me I was overreacting. I didn't want my father to sigh and say I was being dramatic. I planned to ask my friend Jennifer from work to watch Emma. She had offered a dozen times. I should have just accepted her help from the beginning. But then, 2 days before my scheduled surgery, everything changed. I was giving Emma her dinner. Mac and cheese, because it was her absolute favorite, the one thing she would always eat without a fight. She was in her high chair, babbling about her stuffed bunny, when my heart didn't just skip. It stopped. I felt a crushing pain in my chest, the kind they describe in medical textbooks, the kind that radiates down your left arm and up into your jaw. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't call out. Emma looked at me with her big brown eyes, her little face crumpling with confusion. "Mama? Mama, okay?" I managed to dial 911 before I collapsed onto the kitchen floor. The last thing I remember before the paramedics arrived was Emma's little hand reaching through the bars of her high chair, patting my face and saying over and over, "Mama, wake up. Mama, wake up. Please wake up, Mama." In the ambulance, they told me I had gone into sustained VTach. My heart rate was over 200 beats per minute. They had to cardiovert me, to shock my heart back into rhythm, right there in the back of the truck. I needed emergency surgery that same night. There was no more waiting. No more preparing. This was happening now. That's when I called my parents. And that's when they told me they had Drake tickets. That's when my mother told me I was being melodramatic. That's when my father told me to call a friend. That's when they chose a concert over their daughter's life. Patricia, the nanny from Elite Care Services, was a complete and total godsend. She was 54 years old, with 20 years of NICU experience, and the kind of calm competence that comes from having seen absolutely everything. She arrived at the ER in under 13 minutes. I don't know how she did it. I don't know if she broke speed limits or ran red lights. But she walked through those emergency room doors like an angel in sensible shoes, assessed the situation immediately, and scooped Emma into her arms like she had been doing it her whole life. She looked Emma right in the eyes and said, in this soothing, musical voice, "Mama has to go help some doctors fix her heart. You and I are going to go have a fun sleepover at your house. We'll read stories and have snacks, and when you wake up in the morning, Mama will call you on the phone. Does that sound good?" Emma, who had never let a stranger hold her without screaming, actually nodded and reached for Patricia's hand. Something about that woman radiated safety and warmth. I started crying right there in the gurney. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you so much." Patricia squeezed my hand. "Honey, you focus on getting better. Your little girl will be just fine. I've got her. I'm not going anywhere. They wheeled me into surgery at 9:47 that night. The last thing I thought before the anesthesia took me under was that my parents were at a concert. They were standing in an arena somewhere, singing along to Drake, while their daughter was having open heart surgery. While their granddaughter was being cared for by a stranger. While I was fighting for my life on an operating table. The procedure took 4 hours. For hours of Dr. Chin and his team working inside my heart. For hours of Patricia sitting in my living room, reading bedtime stories to Emma. For hours of my parents probably buying overpriced merchandise and posting selfies on social media. Dr. Chin later told me it was more complicated than they had expected. They found multiple abnormal electrical pathways, not just one. They had to do extensive ablation, burning away more tissue than they had planned. And at one point, around hour 3, my heart stopped entirely. Just stopped. They had to restart it with a combination of medication and electrical shocks. I could have died on that table. I could have never woken up. Emma could have grown up without a mother. When I woke up in the cardiac ICU, the first thing I did was ask about Emma. The nurse, a woman named Diane who I knew from working at the hospital, smiled and showed me her phone. Patricia had sent updates every single hour. Pictures of Emma sleeping peacefully in her crib. Short videos of Emma eating her snacks. Text messages with thumbs-up emojis and little hearts. One message said, she asked for Mama once. I told her Mama was getting stronger. She said okay and went back to her blocks. You've raised a very resilient little girl. I stayed in the ICU for 2 days, then moved to a regular cardiac floor for 3 more. Patricia stayed with Emma the entire time. She slept on my couch. She used my shower. She went to the grocery store and bought food for both of them with her own money. I tried to pay her double her rate when I finally got home. She refused. She said, some things matter more than money. That little girl needed someone who could be fully present, who could show up without any baggage or resentment. I'm honored that I got to be that person for her. During those 5 days in the hospital, my phone remained completely silent. No calls from my parents. No texts asking how the dramatic panic attack had turned out. No messages from Marcus checking on his little sister. Nothing. But on day 3, something interesting happened. My father called. I almost didn't answer, but some small, pathetic part of me still hoped. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask about the surgery. He said, Sarah, there's something wrong with the rent payment. The landlord called and said it didn't go through this month. Can you check with Marcus? He handles all that, but I can't reach him. You know how he is about answering his phone. I was still hooked up to a heart monitor. I still had 4 lines in both arms. I had almost died 48 hours earlier. And my father was calling to complain about rent. I don't know anything about that, Dad, I said, my voice flat. You'll have to work it out with Marcus yourself. Well, can you at least try calling him? You're better at getting him to answer than we are. No, Dad. I can't. I'm in the hospital. I had open heart surgery. I almost died. There was a long pause. Oh, right. Well, you sound fine now. So about the rent. I hung up on him. For the first time in my entire life, I hung up on my father. And in that moment, lying in that hospital bed with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the heart monitor beeping in rhythm, I made a decision. I was done. Completely, utterly, permanently done. I went home on day 6. Patricia helped me get settled on the couch, made sure Emma and I had everything we needed within arm's reach, and only left when I literally pushed her out the door with a check for a full week of care. She looked me in the eyes and said, "You call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I gave you my personal cell number for a reason. I mean it, Sarah." On day 7, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop while Emma napped in her room. I reviewed my finances carefully. My cardiologist had recommended I take at least 6 weeks off work to recover fully, maybe longer. Between short-term disability and my savings, I would be okay. Tight, but okay. But only if I stopped the monthly $3,800 drain that had been bleeding me dry for 8 years. I pulled up the automatic payment to my parents' landlord. My finger hovered over the cancel button for a long time. I thought about all those years of quiet giving. All those dinners where my mother praised Marcus for his generosity. All those holidays where I sat in the corner while they fawned over him. All those moments where I needed them and they weren't there. I thought about the phone call from the ambulance. I thought about my father's voice on the hospital phone, asking about rent while I was still in a surgical gown. I clicked cancel. Then I drafted an email. I wrote it slowly, carefully, making sure every word was exactly what I wanted to say. I told my parents that as of today, I was discontinuing the monthly rent and utility payments I had been making on their behalf for the past 8 years. I explained that they might be confused because they had always believed Marcus was covering these expenses. He wasn't. It was always me. Every single payment. Every single month. For 96 consecutive months. I had paid their rent while working full-time, while putting myself through nursing school, while raising my daughter alone after my husband died. I reminded them about my emergency heart surgery. I reminded them about the phone call where they chose Drake over their daughter's life. I told them that the only call I received from them was my father asking about rent while I was in the ICU. And I told them, in the clearest terms I could manage, that I was done. Done being invisible. Done being the afterthought. Done subsidizing their life while they treated me like I didn't matter. I read the email 3 times. Then I hit send. The calls started within hours. My mother left message after message, her voice shifting from confusion to anger to pleading over the course of a single afternoon. My father demanded that I call him back immediately, that this was not how family treated each other, that I was being unreasonable and cruel. My brother Marcus finally called after 2 days, claiming he had no idea the money had been coming from me, claiming he thought the investment account was real. I didn't believe him. I hung up before he could finish his excuses. The calls intensified over the next week. 60, 70, sometimes 80 calls a day from various numbers. My parents. Marcus. My Aunt Linda, who told me I was tearing the family apart. My Uncle Frank, who said I should be ashamed of myself. Family friends who had heard a version of the story that bore no resemblance to reality. I didn't respond to any of them. I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb and focused on healing. On Emma. On building a new life without the weight of people who had never really carried me. 2 weeks after I sent the email, I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Chin. Emma came with me. Patricia drove us to the hospital because I still wasn't cleared to drive myself. We were sitting in the waiting room, Emma coloring in a book I had brought, when my parents walked in. I saw my mother first. She looked older, smaller somehow, like the last few weeks had aged her by years. My father was behind her, his face set in that stern expression he always wore when he was about to deliver a lecture. They spotted me immediately and marched over. "Sarah, we need to talk," my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "You can't just ignore us forever. We're your parents." Emma shrank against my side. She didn't recognize them. They had seen her so rarely that they were essentially strangers to her. "Not here," I said quietly. "I have an appointment." "We've been trying to reach you for 2 weeks." 2 weeks, Sarah? Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" I stood up, keeping Emma behind me. "I know exactly what I've put you through. It's the same thing you put me through when I was having emergency surgery and you chose Drake over your daughter." "We didn't know it was serious," my mother said weakly. "You knew. I told you I was in an ambulance. I told you I needed heart surgery." "There is no version of that conversation where you didn't know it was serious." My father finally spoke. "You've always exaggerated everything, Sarah. Every little ache and pain is a crisis with you. We thought you were being dramatic. You know how you get." I felt something inside me go cold. I almost died. My heart stopped during surgery. They had to restart it. I could have left Emma orphaned. And you didn't even call to check on me afterward. Not one call. Not one text. "We were going to," my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We just got busy." "Busy for 2 weeks? You found time to call me 70 times in one day about rent money, but you couldn't find time to ask if your daughter survived heart surgery." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Sarah Mitchell? Dr. Chin is ready for you." I took Emma's hand and started to walk away. My mother grabbed my arm. "Sarah, please. We're going to lose our apartment. We can't afford it without your help. Just give us a few more months to figure things out. Please. I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I looked up at her face. You had 8 years to figure things out. I'm done, Mom. I'm done subsidizing your life while you treat me like I don't exist. If you lose your apartment, that's not my problem anymore. You're being cruel, my father said. I learned from the best, I replied. Then I pulled my arm free and followed the nurse down the hallway. In the examination room, Dr. Chin checked my incisions, reviewed my test results, and smiled. He said I was healing beautifully. He said my heart rhythm was perfect. He asked what I was doing differently, because whatever it was, I should keep doing it. I told him I had cut toxic people out of my life. He laughed and said that was the best medicine there is. When we finished, Patricia was waiting in the hallway. But so was Dr. Morrison, the ER physician who had been on duty the night I came in. He said he needed to tell me something important. He said that during my surgery, he had called my parents because they were listed as my emergency contact. My mother answered. He identified himself as an ER physician and told her I was in critical condition undergoing emergency cardiac surgery. He told her she should come to the hospital immediately. She asked, and I will never forget this, she asked if I was going to die in the next 2 hours. He said he didn't know, but that my condition was serious and unstable. And my mother said, well, if she's still alive in 2 hours, I'll think about coming by tomorrow. We have plans tonight. Then she hung up. Dr. Morrison said he had documented the call in my chart. He had been a physician for 23 years, and he had never once had a family member respond that way to a life-threatening emergency. He saw my parents in the waiting room earlier, claiming they didn't know how serious it was. He wanted me to know the truth. They knew. They absolutely knew, and they chose not to come. I sat there for a long moment, processing. Then I stood up, thanked him, and walked out of the hospital with Patricia and Emma. Behind me, I saw Dr. Morrison step into the waiting room and start speaking to my parents. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw my father's face go pale. I saw my mother's eyes go wide. He was reading from my chart. He was telling them exactly what he had just told me. I didn't stay to see the rest. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, took a deep breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The calls continued for about 6 weeks, but they slowly faded. At first it was 80, 90 times a day from various numbers. Then 50. Then 20. Then just a few. Eventually, they trailed off to nothing. I heard through my aunt that my parents had to move out of their apartment. They moved in with Marcus in his 1-bedroom condo. Apparently, the arrangement is not going well. Marcus doesn't have any real income. He can't help them. They're applying for senior housing and government assistance now. I feel nothing about this. Not satisfaction. Not guilt. Not sadness. Just nothing. They made their choices. They have to live with them. I'm back at work now, part-time, while I finish recovering. My colleagues have become my real family. They threw Emma a 3rd birthday party last month. 40 people showed up. 40 people who barely knew my daughter, but came anyway because they care about me. They brought gifts and balloons and a cake shaped like a unicorn. Emma was overwhelmed in the best possible way. Emma adores her. She calls her Grandma Pat. I didn't teach her that. She came up with it on her own. Last week, I got a handwritten letter from my mother. Not an email. An actual letter on actual paper. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me open it. She said she had spent months thinking about what to say. She said she knew what she did. She knew she chose wrong. She said that when the doctor called, she told herself I would be fine because I was always fine. But the truth, she wrote, was that she was angry. Angry that I was interrupting her plans. Angry that I always seemed to need something. Angry that I wasn't Marcus. Easy, charming, successful Marcus who never asked for anything. She said she saw it now. She saw what they had done to me. She was ashamed. She said she didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted me to know that she was sorry. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll feel something when I read it. Maybe someday the apology will matter. But today it doesn't. Today I have a life to live and a daughter to raise. And I'm doing both without the people who taught me I wasn't worth showing up for. This morning, Emma ran into the kitchen, her little feet pattering on the tile, and asked if we could go to the park. I said absolutely. As we walked to the park, her hand in mine, I thought about everything I've learned. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when you need them. It's Patricia, who dropped everything to care for a stranger's child. It's Dr. Morrison, who made sure I knew the truth. It's my coworkers who brought casseroles and offered to watch Emma so I could nap. That is my family now. The one I chose. The one that chose me back. And my heart, both the literal one in my chest and the emotional one that had been broken for so long, has never been healthier. If you are still watching, thank you. I share this story not for sympathy, but because I know I am not alone. There are so many of you out there who have given and given to family members who only take. Who have been the invisible child, the disappointment, the one who is never quite enough. If that is you, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve people who show up. You deserve to be valued. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from. Tell me if you have ever had to make a similar decision. You are not alone. I will see you in the next story.